welcome. We are returning to a tradition that we've done 41 times before this. So the 42nd annual with a little pandemic break, Caroline Thompson Memorial Lecture. And we are thrilled to be getting it going again, and particularly thrilled with who we've got to give us this lecture. So my name is Sharon Garland. Most of you know me. I want to welcome some of the alum that are able to make it. We're thrilled you're here. And we always like to give a little bit of an overview of who Caroline Goss Thompson is and why we're doing this. So this is a highlight of our year, and we do it annually to host an OT scholar who encourages all of us, alumni, students, faculty, and friends, to engage in a common phrase for UW-Madison, the fearless sifting and winnowing, by which alone the truth can be found. That's a core value of our university. So I'm really glad you're here to celebrate this legacy that we all are building upon from Caroline Thompson. So I want to give you just a little bit of background about her. She was a founding program director of UW-Madison OT program. She was the coordinator or program director for 31 years, which I don't think anyone has come close to beating that record, and I have no intention of beating it. She was a professor emerita of the OT program, and she lived from 1909 to 2004. So she was around really in the very early stages of occupational therapy. And in 1945, she was invited to Madison to lead the newly developed occupational therapy program, which, pop quiz, when did we actually start? Does anyone know? Yes. 1943. 1943. You get an extra prompt. Well done. So she wasn't the very first, but she was invited and really obviously oversaw it for many years. We were one of the earliest programs to start training OTs, and we just hit our 80th year of being an occupational therapy program, which is super cool. But during her time at the University of Wisconsin, Caroline Thompson published a number of scholarly articles related to patients with neurological disorders, polio, and other physical disabilities. She published in AJOT, American Journal of Physical Medicine and Rehab, and the Australian OT Journal. And she really set the stage for us to be the kind of program that we are, with scholarly productivity alongside training of student excellence in education. And it's a legacy that we intend to continue. So we're here celebrating that legacy. And part of how we do that is to sponsor and invite one of the scholars in our field to come join us and share their knowledge. A little more about Caroline. She was, if you knew her, I didn't know her, but she was someone who was very positive about occupational therapy, constantly recruiting others, bringing people together. These are just a few photos of hosting events, talking about occupational therapy. But her legacy and generosity to the UW-Madison OT program has been and continues to be instrumental in supporting students at the undergraduate and graduate level, now just at the graduate level. So part of what you're going to hear from tonight is a student who has been supported. We have a fellowship that we issue annually that supports the PhD student. And in a moment, Libby will be presenting for us, but she was one of the recipients of that fellowship. So that's one of the ways that we've honored her, and a lot of alum made that possible in honor of Caroline Goss Thompson. And finally, just a little overview of our history. It started again in 1943, and we were one of the early programs to introduce research methods in 1964. We started a PhD in 1996. Went to an MSOT in 2005, and then in 2021 started the entry-level OTD. So we've been around, but we keep evolving to meet up with the needs of our profession. So with that, we have, as as we do each year, and we will continue to do each year, we invite someone to come speak. And as you know, Dr. Susy Starkis, who we've invited this year, we're going to hear from her in about a half an hour. But we're thrilled to have her, and she represents all the values that Carolyn Goss Thompson would be pleased to see in someone that we've invited in her honor. So finally, I would like to ask for, we have an award that we do annually at this event as well, and we've renamed it, but it's Clinical Educator of the Year. Let me find my cheat sheet here. Here we go. So fieldwork is an integral component of the OT education experience, as you all know. Raise your hand if you're a student that finished fieldwork or third years. It's an important opportunity for students to apply their knowledge, critically assess evidence, assume responsibility for clients, and demonstrate ethical decision-making skills. It is no easy feat, and at UW-Madison, we have partnered with over 150 community sites to educate our students. We could not do this without you. So we are extremely grateful to our community partners and their commitment to providing high-quality clinical education experiences for the past 26 years. And we as a program have recognized and honored clinical educators who go above and beyond for our students. So this year, we had 30 students complete 2 level 2 fieldwork experiences, working with a total of 84 fieldwork educators. And we're grateful for every one of them, but we like to pull out a few that have been particularly wonderful and gone above and beyond. So I would like to invite Sarah Dyerson, if you're here. I know Dory is here. So Dory, come on up. And Sarah, are you here as well? No? Yes. This year, we would like to honor Sarah Dyerson and Dory Wolf with 2 fieldwork educators who work at UW Health in the acute care unit. And we want to acknowledge that these 2 OTs were frontline workers during the pandemic, and we are grateful for their contributions to our Madison community. As clinical educators, their communication and support during our students' level 2 placement made a lasting impact. They modeled professionalism in stressful situations, provided just right challenges for our students to grow professionally, and created a supportive environment centered on personal and professional development. Working and educating within acute care is a challenge, and Sarah and Dory stepped up to the challenge and executed it with grace. On behalf of UW-Madison's OT program, we thank Sarah and Dory for their dedication to enhancing our profession. You may notice, I was trying to take it off the wall, but it's attached permanently. There is a plaque, and their names will be added to the plaque, or actually a new plaque. So those of you that walk the halls on the 2nd floor, there's a plaque that will honor them, and then we also have a gift for them. So with that, I'm going to invite Carla to come up and introduce our next speaker.
All right, well, I have the honor of introducing Libby Haladic, our Carolyn Thompson Fellow from last year. Libby entered the OT program at UW-Madison, coming from a career in theater and the arts, some of you do know. She has been an invaluable part of our research lab since the beginning of her master's degree here. I was elated when she quickly decided after entering the program that she not only wanted to be able to understand and apply research findings from an occupational therapy practitioner, but also begin to pursue her PhD to be part of the research production. Libby's research interests have focused on involving community partners at an individual and organizational level to be actively engaged in all aspects of the research process, with a particular focus on the importance of having the opportunity as a family with a child with a neurodevelopmental disability to be fully engaged in their communities, and how that engaged participation impacts the child on family well-being and health. Libby is working to complete her PhD next summer, and it will focus on meaningful participation in cultural institutions for families with children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. She also has applied for a Fulbright postdoc opportunity where she hopes to continue that work in the Czech Republic next fall. Are you excited? That's sad to see her go. Today, she will share with us some of the great work that she accomplished last year when she was on the Carolyn Thompson Fellowship. So,
Thank you, Carla. I'm going to say a bunch of things about my work, but now I don't need to. I'm Libby. I graduated from this program around under Dr. Carla Ostro. And so last year I had this year where I got to be the Caroline Thompson Fellow and have some extra time to do research. And part of that time is spent working on a program that's very important to me that I've worked with for my whole OT life so far, with our local parenting program at our high school. And so my talk today is called Understanding Supports for Teen Parents Through Program Evaluation and Capital High Parenting. Okay, so it's really important that I talk about the collaborators of this project because the program evaluation was done in a community-based research project format with the Capital High Parenting staff and students and alums. Jessie Lowe, who's the primary parenting teacher, along with many students and alum and staff from our program and other programs, were really instrumental in the entire process. And we're incredibly grateful to the students and alums that really shared their experience with us. It's really an effort to build a better parenting program in the future. This project did receive some funding through the Mortgage Center, which is a center here on campus that funds community-based research projects. And part of my education in my PhD has been to get a community engaged scholarship certificate. And so the Mortgage Center has been a real home for me and a place that I want to highlight on campus that I think OT work is really aligned with. Also, I know a number of students that are here in the audience, your names are on the slide because OTD students have been really instrumental in collecting the data and analyzing the data for this project and working in partnership with the parenting program. And also a post-professional OTD student, Yasina, took on one of the sort of arms of this project as her capstone project, and you'll see some of her work today in this presentation. So a little bit of background about why teen parenting programs are so important. This graph here is a graph from the CDC that breaks down teen birth rate by race and ethnicity. And in general, we know that the teen birth rate across the US is declining. But what you see here is that teen mothers of color continue to experience high birth rates. If we look at this, the green, we see that, hold on one second, I'm gonna make my notes a little bit bigger so I can click through this. We see that Black teen mothers in Wisconsin are quite high. The birth rate for Black teen mothers in Wisconsin is 43.5 births per 1,000 teen women aged 15 to 19, which is almost double the birth rate for teen Black women across the United States. We also see that in the yellow bars, the birth rates for Hispanic women, both in Wisconsin and nationally, are quite high, really when compared to white teen women birth rates, which is what you see in purple. So in Madison here, one of the ways that we support teen parents is through a high school-based parenting program. In the past, it was called SAPAR. Maybe some people have heard that name. Some other parenting programs are also called SAPAR. But in the last few years, it was renamed as Capital High Parenting. And the program is part of the Madison Metropolitan School District. And they have a global mission that is every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. Some of the goals that are really unique to the parenting program are to increase graduation rates among the pregnant and parenting teens, to increase post-secondary enrollment with these teens, and decrease the repeat pregnancy prior to age of 19, as well as increase parenting specific knowledge and skills. So I wanted early on, There we go. Early on, I wanted to share a really important quote from some of our data, and this quote captures the impact of school-based parenting programs. Many of the students and alums that we talked to noted how their pregnancy marked this really big shift in their life. And one alum shared, "I mean, if I hadn't been in that program, I don't think I would have gotten as far as I've gotten." So our occupational therapy program has had a long-term partnership with the parenting program for many years. It started with Dr. Mary Schneider, who started the program when the parenting program asked her to present on her research on fetal exposure to alcohol and stress. And when Dr. Schneider retired, my mentor, Carla Osra, was past the partnership, and she continued to deliver educational lectures, as well as starting a research sort of line and did a research study on mindfulness with the teen parents. And it's important that we acknowledge the former parent and teacher that was part of this project and that our original collaborator, Lisa Reisdorf. Very important that we talk a little bit about Jessie Loeb, who is the current parenting teacher, who is a person that is a doula, an author, and an amazing educator. She really champions the needs of her students and all of the staff that work at Capital High Parenting with the students. And this collaboration really came from her. And she has been a real vital connector for us in this collaboration to connect with the staff of the program, to connect with the students, and to connect with the Madison Public School Administration. So over the years, the partnership and the programming for the parenting program has really evolved and has really changed depending on the needs of the parenting program as well as what's going on with the OT program. I actually started my involvement with this program my very first semester as an OT student. Maybe that's why I decided to go into research so quickly, I guess. I was supporting these family-centered occupations at nights at the museum that the SAPAR program would host for SAPAR students and alums with their families. And then I also helped conduct the brine shrimp experiment, which is based on Mary Schneider's research, where we do a hands-on experiment with the pregnant high school students talking about the impact of the exposure of alcohol on fetal development. And it was really through this collaborative partnership with Jessie Loeb, the primary parenting teacher, who, because we had been flexible with how we had worked throughout the past, came to Dr. Ostra and asking if there was a way that we could do this in collaboration, if there was a way that we could really think about what was working well in the program and where some improvements in the program could move towards some changes. The parenting program knew that they were going to be moving buildings, they were going through this renaming process where they were becoming wrapped in to the Capital High alternative programs with all of the other alternative programs in the school district. So I think maybe you're wondering, so why occupational therapists, right? Emerging OT literature really identifies that occupation-centered perspectives and practices in high schools can support well-being, the outcomes, the health and well-being outcomes of both the teen mothers and their children. And also supporting the occupations of teen parents can empower teens as parents and really as humans with cascading benefits in their life. In this project, we used our OT lens to think about occupation-focused strategies that support high school students with children. These adolescents are really holding a dual role of parent and student as they're developing life skills and reimagining their student occupations as new parents. A student parent actually really amplifies this dual role of parent and high school student in this quote. We got to talk about how our childhood trauma affected our parenting and how we could change that, like how to cut the pattern. So I think in her class was just the one that hit the deepest. I had to reflect on my own life and what I wanted for my daughter. So the purpose of this program evaluation was to develop recommendations for Capital High Parenting and other high school parenting programs to promote evidence-based practices for educating teen parents and supporting their children. This image here is an overview of our three-pronged approach for our research methods for gathering data for this program evaluation. We worked in collaboration with the parenting program staff and our team of OT researchers to develop goals focused on gathering really broad input of data from diverse participants, and also integrating the values of the program into the analysis that we were doing and the final products that we would be creating. We used three forms of collecting data, which are a literature review that examined evidence that exists for supporting teen high school students, parenting high school students. We also conducted semi-structured interviews with students, alums, and staff, and we conducted a thematic analysis of the interviews. And our third approach was what Yasmina worked on a lot with her capstone project, was a review of parenting programs around Wisconsin and one in Chicago to really understand the strategies that were being used. And we did a website review along with further semi-structured interviews with staff from other programs. And so from these three sources of data, we're integrating the findings to create recommendations that are relevant to the Capital I parenting program. This is a quote from one of the staff at our program. Hopefully all those resources made parenting a little easier, because there's a knowledge that's shared, there's education that's shared, there's love that's shared, there's support that's shared. All that breaks down barriers. So now I'll tell you a little bit about what we came up with those three sources of data. The first line of data was our literature review that is taken on the format of an annotated bibliography. We have 30 relevant articles that are summarized with each study's key points and its relevance to Capital I parenting. We've provided the text of all of those studies for our community partners, so if someone at the school in the administration wants to read that study, wants to find out more details about the research, they have that available to them and have easy access to the research. In collaboration with our partners, we grouped the articles into 7 categories that you see here. Each category has 3 to 5 of the most relevant research studies in that area. And at the end of each section, we summarize the main takeaway points that are relevant to the Capital I parenting program. I'll share with you an example from parenting skill education, which is typically taught in childbirth classes and parenting classes that are specific to teen parents. In our findings, the findings in the literature indicate that parenting programs provide social support that is really gives the teens confidence in their parenting skills. And particularly interesting to OTs is that teen maternal depression is linked to developmental delays in their children. But we also have found that mental health intervention for the mother through a high school-based parenting program improves her mental health and has long-term impact on her child at mitigating developmental delays in early childhood. Our second form of data collection were interviews that works to understand what works and doesn't work by interviewing 8 students, 12 alum, and 14 staff from our program and other programs. Our interviews lasted 30 minutes to 2 hours, mostly about 45 minutes. The 2 hours was the one that Carla did. The interviews were given a choice about where they wanted to be interviewed. We met with the students and the CHP staff in the school in a private room. Many of the alums, we went to their workplace or we went to their home. And we also offered an option over Zoom, so we were able to talk to alums that no longer live in the state. And we interviewed staff from other programs over Zoom. We had a semi-structured interview guide that asked similar questions across all of the groups, but actually was tailored to that person's specific role as a student or alum and a staff member. This is a graphic representation of our thematic analysis that asks the question, what kind of supports are needed for parenting high school students? We found 8 themes across all of the students, alums, and staff. There were also unique themes within each of these groups. I was talking to someone in our lab about this today. But today we're really going to focus on what we saw across all of the groups. One of the things that maybe was unique about the staff was how the staff has a different perspective on teen development that maybe the teens are not as insightful to see. Today we're really going to focus on these three robust themes that were really present in all of the interviews. You see here required concrete supports in the darker gray box. But I just quickly wanted to share about these themes in the lighter gray box. There are 5 themes that we're calling things that make the program run, which includes flexibility, approach of staff, recognition of parenting needs, social connections, and program values. So we saw these themes threaded throughout all of our interviews, and they're really these soft skills and human factors that are really vital to how you support teen parents. So now I'll tell you a little bit more details about our concrete supports. Classroom supports were characterized by concrete services or items coming from the program. So this included educational support provided by the program staff, which included curriculum specific to parenting and life skills. Classroom supports also included physical items coming from the program, such as diapers, maybe car seats like this photo here, and physical spaces that are required for the students, such as the private entrance where they could bring their baby into school without the hub of other high school students. A student here shared about her experience. The resources we have here, we're not going to get them anywhere else. Like the stuff that our social worker does for us, you don't get them at any other school. The category of basic needs illustrates essential supports that are required for teens to participate in high school, specifically childcare, transportation, and safety. One alum reflected on her transportation experience riding a public bus to school in the winter. I remember one time I had to ride the bus to school with him in my hands. I'm just like, this is too much. Another student shared how, as a young mom trying to manage childcare and her high school work, she said, daycare helps a lot. Daycare helps so you get like a little time just to think about everything. You don't have a baby climbing on you while you're trying to do your work. The third theme is connections outward, which we've defined as supports needed for the students beyond school and out into the community. Connections outward included community resources and involvement, such as field trips out into the community. This also included connections to friends and family, and the implementation of life skills and parenting skills that were learned inside the program. Connections outward are often bridged to parenting and personal success after the parenting program. And then alum shared, they talked to you about car seat safety, about your children's behavior, about early signs of autism. And so you leave with a lot of knowledge. And so I think they really try to prepare you the best as they can. In our third area, we examined what was happening in nearby parenting programs, primarily in Wisconsin, but also a charter school in Illinois that our program was particularly interested in how they were getting some of the funding, what was going on at that program. So this is a map of the 9 programs that we reviewed, including our Madison program. One of the things that we realized very quickly when we were reviewing the websites of other programs was how similar strategies or services may be called one name but operate very differently, or the opposite. They might be called the same thing. They may be the naming and the defining was really unclear and all over the place. So we really had to operationalize strategies that were really important to our Madison program, or sort of what we were finding in the literature as supports that were important to teen parenting programs. So, for example, transportation is now defined as reduced cost transportation provided to students through grants or allocated funds. So really, transportation that is financially covered. Often in the programs, 1-year grant is how they're covering their transportation. It's not part of their regular budget. Community partnerships are direct connections to outside partners for students to access resources and services. And childcare, we really clarified that this is a value of our Madison program, that it was on-site childcare that is free or at reduced cost. So with those definitions in place, we mapped out the strategies across the program, and you can see here, there are very variable results. Some of the most interesting outcomes were in this basic needs category. Transportation was found in only 3 out of the 10 programs. Childcare was found in half, 5 out of the 10 programs. On a positive note, 80% of the programs, 8 out of 10, had really strong community partnerships that were vital to their program. So, that's a lot of data. What's next? So we're currently collaborating with our community partners, collaborators at Capital High Parenting to integrate the findings from all of these sources to produce a list of recommendations. And we're doing this with our community partners to really make sure that these recommendations are meaningful and are more likely to be implemented in the school in a feasible way. I'm going to share some of our recommendations that we're working on. First, we want to ensure that basic needs for pregnant and parenting students are in place, including transportation to school, childcare at school, and the physical and psychological safety in the school environment. Second, we want to train, I lost my cursor. We want to train the broader high school staff. Capital High Parenting has now moved into this new building with all of the alternative programs. And so we want to recommend that we train the broader high school staff beyond the parenting program teachers about what are the unique needs of parenting and pregnant students, so that everyone at the high school can respond to the needs of the parents. The third recommendation is something that's been a really long-term goal of the parenting program that's never been able to be a possibility before, to provide ways for teen fathers to gain parenting skills. And so we see a lot of opportunity for this. We moved to this new building to find unique ways to implement this and to grow the program. The fourth is really a strength. Our fourth recommendation is really just recognizing the strength of the program, that community partnerships have been really key to this program for a long time. And so we want to continue those partnerships and create some synergy between the other alternative programs to continue to make new connections and support all of the students at Capital High. So one quote about a student and her motivation for planning for the future that really puts all of these pieces together. She said, but once you're getting into like the parenting class, that's like when a bunch of stuff hits you. Like, it's not just about, you know, rocking a baby to sleep and how you're gonna feed it. You know, there's so much more into it, like your plan. Like what elementary you want your kid to go to. So I hope that this program evaluation overview demonstrates the value of parenting programs like Capital High Parenting. High school parenting programs are an intervention that we know improves education outcomes for mothers, but we know that it's also a setting that impacts the long-term health and well-being of parent and their child. And OTs can really be leaders in this emerging area of practice, supporting teens in a school setting. We've been able to use our OT skills to highlight the unique occupations of teen parents. Like many community-based research projects, the collaboration just going to keep going on. We're working to make recommendations, and we're continuing to find opportunities to disseminate the findings of this program evaluation and really think about other high school programs and how Capital High Parenting can implement these suggestions. Also, as OTs, there's an opportunity, we think, for OTs to become more involved in school-based parenting programs. OTs have amazing expertise to work with both parent and child in a family-centric way. And it's also, OTs can be leaders in reducing stigma for teen parents by working with them in their schools and in their community. It's also really important to think about advocacy on a larger level and how OTs can really advocate for a policy that does things like funds transportation and funds childcare in schools so that teen parents can have those not as a pieced together thing that their program is doing, but can really have those services provided to them on a systematic level. There have been a number of articles that have been published about this project and capital high parenting that I have QR codes here that you can link to. One is from the School of Ed that wrote about this evaluation. The second one is a spotlight on a graduate, a woman who graduated from capital high parenting last year and her experience in the parenting program. And the third is an article and a video about that includes Jessie from the parenting program talking about why parenting programs are so important. Here are my references that I'm happy to share with anyone. I'm also happy to share my slides. And I just want to say thank you so much to the UW-Madison OT department for giving me this fellowship and letting me do this talk, to my mentor, Dr. Osrau, who has guided me the whole way and pushed me to really think about how OTs can really be vital in this setting. Also, I really appreciate the OT students that I've worked with on this project and my lab mates for teaching me how to do animations in a PowerPoint. And Jessie Lowe, who is our primary contact with the department, with the parenting program, is really key, and I love working with her. But also, my deepest gratitude is really to the students and alums and staff who have been so open and so willing to share their experiences, because they're so invested in making a future better for parenting teenagers. Thank you so much.
Libby's presentation actually set up Dr. Squares really well. We could not have planned this better, because wherever you engage with people, whether it's in an emergency room or in an outpatient clinic or inpatient facility, they all want to go home. And so that's been a focus of Susy's work. So I had a long thing planned, but I can tell you that she has so many firsts. I could spend her whole time talking, just listing out her accomplishments. She's one of the first OTs to have a portfolio funding that crosses a number of different funding sources. The National Institute of Neurological Disease and Stroke, the National Institute on Aging, American Occupational Therapy Foundation, you name it, she has it. When she got out of graduate school, there was only one occupational therapy scholar who had NIH funding. That was Florence Clark. She was the first, the only. And Susy has a lot of firsts too, but she really has taken that on. Her work is really embedded in person, environment, occupation. It really supports clinical practice, it supports policy, and it leads to other research. She's supported training of students, created training programs that are funded for PhD students and postdocs. So her work is awesome. But she keeps it real, she keeps it grounded in practice. That's all I'm going to say.
Thanks. There's so many of you who I've gotten to spend most of the day with. It has been an absolute pleasure. I love that the UW-Madison team always lets me hang out, whether it's AOTA and I crash your breakfast at the scholar table repeatedly, or hit your alumni party because it's fun. Thank you so much for always letting me be part of your team, and thank you so much for the honor of speaking with you tonight. Libby, there's nothing that strikes, more terror in the heart of the speaker than to hear the person that precedes you as a theater major, so thanks for that. And thanks for the great talk, it was really nice. Thanks, Dorothy, for the kind words. It means a lot to be here hanging out with you, and thanks for your hospitality, it's so fun. So I'm going to give you, that was kind of my official title, Developing and Implementing Fall Prevention Interventions for Underserved Older Adults. It sounds kind of boring. So what we're really going to talk about is the most important and effective tool in your OT toolbox. So I'm going to talk about fall prevention, but I'm going to wrap it in what I think is probably the most important thing that we can do as therapists, whether we're researchers or clinicians. I think it's super important. So here's my mandatory disclosures that are on the right side, and then what I think are the most important disclosures for me to tell you is At heart, I'm a clinician, and I began my career as a clinician. And two, I came from WashU land, and I thought that knowledge was the most important thing that I could take away. My knowledge of theory and practice, and I thought my OT toolbox was full. And boy, was I wrong. So some of you who heard me talk earlier learned that my first job was at the VA Medical Center. I actually I covered about 4 services there, in addition to drug and alcohol, and rehab, and the nursing home. I also was a hand therapist, because that seems like the perfect complement to those other jobs. But this is about my very first dynamic splint that I made. And you guys don't know, but back in the olden days, when Sharon and I started making splints, we actually had to build them all from scratch. We cut out polyform, and we glued it together with heat guns, and it was a process. And this was my first dynamic splint. The patient that I saw, I actually observed the surgery so that I could see kind of the tendons and where they were, and how I needed to build the splint to make it perfect anatomically for him. This is not my splint. I don't have a picture of it, but this is what it looked like. It was perfect, and I was very, very proud of it. And the wearing protocol at that point was that you wear your splint pretty much at all times, because you have a tendon transfer. And you have to put those tendons in a position of rest, and the surgeons yell at you if your patient is not compliant with the splint. And my patient was very uncompliant with his splint. And I got yelled at by the orthopedic surgeons about why our patient wasn't compliant. And I in turn yelled at the patient and said so many of us worked so hard to fix his arm function that he really needed to pay attention. He nodded politely and said, "Okay, Susy." And one day I was taking my lunchtime run, and this patient was leaving from his outpatient visit, and I watched him walk across the street. And I watched him undo the Velcro of that splint while he was at the bus stop and stick it in his backpack. And boy, was I ready for him the next day. Dude, are you kidding me? You've got to wear the splint. And he said, "Susy, if I wear that giant monstrosity of a splint that you are so proud of to my neighborhood, someone's gonna hurt me because they're gonna think that I can't defend myself. So you're putting me in a bad position here." And that was when I realized that knowledge and tools and the ability to make a splint probably don't mean a whole lot if you don't learn to listen to your patients. And so today we're going to talk about listening, and we're going to talk about community engagement and why it can change your life. So a little bit about me and my group. I have about 12 trainees. We have a participant advisory board. These are not key stakeholders that are leaders of groups, but these are older adults who have been part of clinical trials and cohort studies that hang out with us, teach our students. They're part of our research team. We have about 9 staff right now. We have well over 1,000 participants who are in the set of cohort studies and trials and studies that we have going on in our group. We look like this. We like to hang out with the older adults that we work with. And the older adults live in the areas that are indicated in red. And so this is the city of St. Louis. You can see we're cradled nicely by that curve of the Mississippi River. And a lot of the participants that we see on the north side come from those red areas. And this map actually talks about social inequity. And you can pretty much use this map for any social inequity that you want to talk about. People that didn't get access to COVID shots, people that died from COVID, people that don't have their food deserts, people who don't get diagnosed with breast cancer. Pretty much any health disparity that you want to list, the map is going to look very similar. And our research participants live in the red. So just a moment about what we study, for those of you who haven't heard me today. We do have a big federally funded portfolio. And so I have an interest in environment and how environment supports behavior. So we study things like transition home after stroke and inpatient rehab. I'm really interested in falls and fall prevention. We have a study looking at people who are aging with long-term physical disabilities, those people that we discharged from rehab years ago, and we never see them again. Well, they were aging in our community, and they're not thriving. So we had a study looking at how they're coping with aging. So I can talk a little bit about those if you're interested, just to give you a sense of what it looks like. But for today, my objective is that we really think about listening and how if we listen to the folks we serve, we will be more effective. And I want to talk about kind of 3 methods of community engagement that we use in our lab, and that I hope that you guys can learn as you develop your labs or engage with the community to help you. So a little bit about me. I was raised by mentors who believe in engagement. After I graduated with my PhD, I was hired back at Washington University by Dave Gray, who was an individual with quadriplegia. He hosted his kind of radical disability friends to come and hang out and talk to our research team. And I was really lucky to begin my scientific career with this perspective. I quickly shifted from having a medical model of disability, having grown up in a medical school, to a social model of disability. This really kind of solidified my real commitment to understanding the environment and how it helps us. So I think I can do this. So this is kind of the Nothing About Us Without Us, which was the rallying call of the disability rights movement, and kind of really sparked my appreciation for how listening to people like Dave Gray and his colleagues helped me understand the disability experience. So that's kind of for those qualitative researchers. There's my perspective and where I'm in. So I looked very ahead of the curve because I was community engaged from the start. I didn't have a choice when I was working with Dave Gray, and I appreciated the value of the insight that he could give me. If I was developing a measure for helping people with disabilities, he could tell me if I was measuring the right thing, and it was a really helpful perspective. So in 2004, when the NIH started talking about community engaged research, I was already on the track of becoming community engaged. So I'm grateful to Dave Gray for that insight and that idea. So let's talk about what community engagement is. It's an approach to, it's not a specific study design. So it's not, you can have community engaged research in any study design that you want to use. I believe, this is opinion, this is Susy Stark opinion, not fact, that you can design for dissemination and implementation by using community engaged approaches. It sets you up on the path that the intervention that you're working on is going to be successful because you've paid attention to the issues important to the community. It embraces kind of a partnership between us and the community. So it's not, we know best, we're going to tell you what to do, but we can work together to figure out the best thing to do in this situation. The question that we would often think about and grapple with in our research group is, what is community, right? So we define it as a group of people who are linked by maybe social ties, share a common perspective, who may or may not live in the same geographic location. This has become so true now that we live in a Zoom community. Folks may share a culture, age, language, religion. There's lots of things that we can have that can mark us as a community. It can include agencies, it can include providers, stakeholders, residents in the community. So thinking about community, define who your community is, and then you can kind of strike out and figure out who you want to hang out with. Keep in mind, communities are not the same, and they rarely speak with one voice. So making sure you have representation from the community is really important. Community engaged research is on a continuum. I think this is important to realize, from less engaged to more engaged. All you have to do is actually walk out of a clinic some days, and you can count yourself as community engaged. So that's the very low bar of being community engaged. You can be a community engaged researcher with a topic of importance to the community, kind of having the aim of combining knowledge with action and achieving social change, that kind of middle ground. Or you can be all in and do community-based participatory research, where you have members of your community who are part of the community you're studying, who are part of your research team, and you all work together. You ask questions of relevance to them, you publish, you submit grants with them. I'm kind of here in the middle ground. longed to be more community engaged, but the agencies I work with, they're lovely, but they just tell me they don't have time to give up their whole life to do research with me. So we've kind of negotiated this middle ground and we work together. So the three strategies I want to talk about tonight, and then I'll let you go home to your friends and families, and thank you for hanging with me. So we have three things we're going to talk about: partnerships, advisory boards, and then these are kind of in order of how I introduce them in my research program, and community-based research networks. So I'm going to take a side note, go down a little rabbit hole, talk about what I love, falls. Because these are, I need a little context to understand what I study and why community is an important part of all this. So I always take the opportunity to teach health providers about falls because I didn't know this data when I started researching falls, and I think it's stunning. So 1 in 4 older adults, age 65 and older, are going to fall. It is a remarkable public health risk. So many of us don't realize falls are the leading cause of injury and injury death among older adults, a leading cause of hip fracture, brain injury. It's stunning, the things that happen that we treat after the fact, when we could prevent before the fact. Falls are serious. About half of falls occur in the home. It makes sense because older adults, as they retire, spend more time in their home. So half occur in the home, and about a third are just caused by a barrier in the home. The other 60+% occur from multiple things like behavior plus environment, but about a third are just caused by environmental barriers alone, like a cord or a throw rug or a slippery tub. 9 out of 10 homes in the United States have no adaptations made to them to help older adults age in place. 90% of our homes of older adults don't have anything to support aging in place. But 90% of older adults tell us that's where they're in an aging place. So home is a really important potential target for fall prevention, which is a really bad problem that we have in our United States. So there's my commercial. So we've worked over in the past 12 to 15 years creating a body of evidence that supports OTs delivering home moms to prevent falls. From basic tools, we have developed measures and clinical reasoning tools, and then we've kind of moved down to some clinical trials, and then we've actually done some implementation work and have taken fall prevention, home modification work to kind of the higher level of evidence that allows it to be implemented across the U.S. and area agencies on aging. And I'll talk a little bit about that today. But the intervention that we've targeted is something called HARP, the Home Hazard Removal Program. And I'll just tell you a little bit about HARP, just so you know what it is. It's a manualized intervention delivered by occupational therapists, delivered in the homes of older adults. We know HARP works best for people at high risk of falling, so people who might have ADL impairment, who might be using a mobility device, people who are the oldest old, 80 years or older. They are the ideal person to receive HARP. So the target of our intervention is behavior change. We're trying to improve reduce their fall risk behaviors, and we also remove hazards in the home. So all those things that you have learned about in your time as an OT, adding grab bars, adding no stick stuff to the bathtub, sexy stuff that really people want to talk about. The essential ingredients to the intervention, because I think it's really important when we do clinical trials, we understand what we put into interventions, are removing the home hazards, teaching self-management strategies, tailoring in a standardized way, so we do the same thing for everybody, but the interventions never look the same, right? Because we're client-centered. So that's the essential and the active ingredients in this intervention. And we believe that by reducing the environmental press or the barriers in the environment, we can improve the outcome, which is reduced falls. So we do 1 to 2 60-minute sessions with a trained OT using standardized assessment, and then 1 booster session at 3 months. That's the program that we have. This is what it looks like. Session 1, the OT comes in, identifies home hazards, determines kind of the abilities of the person, and looks at the interaction of the abilities and the home hazards, begins to teach people awareness of fall risks, and then we start implementing interventions in session 2, and if needed, session 3. We continue to educate, we make sure people are independent in using the things that we bring them. We might install lights that come on as you wake up in the middle of the night, so it lights a pathway to the bathroom so you don't fall. We might install no-stick tape in the bottom of your bathtub so you don't slip when you're taking a shower. We install a lot of grab bars in our days. So those are the kinds of really basic interventions that we provide. And then at before 6 months, at 3 to 6 months, we come in and make sure there's no problems and people are still on the right track and that no new problems have cropped up. Because I don't know if you've noticed it, but older adults continue to change, and environments change every day. We want to make sure people still have the resources they need to be independent. So the intervention has lots of tools. It's got a manual, it's got scripts, it's got decision algorithms, and recommendations for how to deliver the intervention on a daily basis. So that's what we're talking about today when we talk about PARC. So back from that commercial to our program, let's talk about community partnerships and how I wouldn't be here without the community partners that I have. So this is a slide that Dave Sikora from the Area Agency on Aging, who's my steadfast partner, and I we gave a talk some time ago about how to partner AAAs and researchers to have cool, fun outcomes like reductions in falls. And so I used this slide. Dorothy's actually on this slide without knowing it. So if you see in 1995, the Memory and Aging Project was initiated at the Area Agency on Aging. And that has nothing to do with falls. That was Dorothy Everett's program that she initiated so long ago. So I think my point is, it's a long history of repeated support to an agency that builds meaningful partnerships. Since then, we've served on advisory boards, we've brought our students into the agency. The green dots are kind of our arrows are the grants that we've gotten together. And the coolest thing that we've had is some of our OTs have joined the staff of the Area Agency on Aging. So we've helped them grow their group, and they in turn have helped us grow our group. It's been a really, really positive, upward kind of partnership for all of us. I'm even proud one of our students, Adam Pearson, has just become the head of the Department of Health and Human Services. So he's over the Area Agency on Aging now. So one of our OTD students is leading that charge because of the time that he spent with us in the lab. So I'm really proud of him for that. So it's a long, deep partnership. So I was really sitting around in COVID thinking about this. I'm like, how have I survived COVID? Besides the other things, like so many Zoom meetings, but how has our research program survived? Because we were doing okay. And I came to the conclusion it was really my community partnerships that helped us survive. So that's kind of a little undercurrent theme of this is your partners have your back. So the benefits of listening to our partners, in addition to surviving COVID, they really help us understand implementation. If you know anything about clinical trials, it's one thing to invent something, it's another thing to actually turn it into a public health practice. So if you have a community agency at your back, implementing what you do will be a natural progression of what you're doing. If you try to invent it in a vacuum by yourself, it rarely works. It helps you understand the landscape, gives you some pretty powerful national test beds. It's really been critical for us. It helps us to think about designing for implementation. When you're working with a partner, they don't let you get away with, well, this would be easiest. You've got to do what's best for the community, and that's going to be what works later on. You have this connection to research participants, especially those who are high-risk, underserved people who generally don't engage with researchers. But guess what? When you come in with a community partner hand in hand, that's a natural way to build trust that you don't have in any other situation. introductions, collaborations with other organizations. We've built a network because of one partnership that was strong that we built. And it's a natural dissemination of your work. You can take what you learned and you can put it in an page ad or you can put it in a journal, and that's only going to serve a small group of people. But if you are able to disseminate your findings to the community, that is where you're going to have impact, and that's when people are going to join in and really be interested in what you want to do. So this is kind of a visual abstract of HARP, just to kind of give you a walk through it. So we had over 300 participants that we randomized to treatment or usual care control. We had the primary aim, this was a negative trial by the way, primary aim of reducing the risk of any fall for participants. But our secondary aims, they were all negative except for rate of falls, which is a really important number. We were actually able to reduce the rate of falls. It was a 38% reduction in the rate of falls for older adults for the treatment group. So it was a pretty important, striking number that, while not perfect, we really got a big effect. What was actually kind of cool is we had a 111% return on investment. So for every participant, it costed out, it's just a bit over $750 to deliver the intervention. That includes OT time and about $250 worth of equipment. And we had a decrease in healthcare utilization. It was like a $1,600 decrease in healthcare utilization. So it's an economic benefit as well as a benefit of hopefully staying alive and not going into a nursing home, which is what's really important to me. So we were really thrilled with HARP, and it really was all down to the area agency on aging, because I called them and they gave me a list of 10,000 people, and they told me who was at high risk for falls on the list, and we randomized the list, and we started at the top, and we achieved our recruitment within months, instead of some studies that don't achieve recruitment for years. So community partnerships, yeah, for clinical trials. What's really kind of fun is we evaluated process outcomes of HARP. Here's what's, there's a lot of process outcomes, but 79% of the participants we approached agreed to be randomized to our treatment. They didn't agree to the treatment, they agreed to be randomized to the treatment. And I attribute that to the trust and connections that we were able to build because of our long-standing relationship with the Area Agency on Aging that was begun in 1992 that really helped us come in with a sense that we were going to do the right thing for folks and we weren't going to steer them wrong. And I don't think as investigators we always have that pride and ability. So thank you, community partners. And then just talking briefly, we were able to take HARP, have it reviewed by the National Center on Aging. I wasn't really hot to do this, but my community partner asked, please. If the NCOA approves HARP as an evidence-based intervention, it then allows area agencies on aging across the country to use a special pot of money designated for evidence-based interventions to spend it on programs to reduce barriers in the home. And there was no other program that was approved to do this. There are lots of programs on exercise and diabetes and self-management, but there was nothing on helping people remove barriers in the home. So my partner thought it was really important, and so we jumped through the hoops to make it happen, and it's been an overwhelmingly positive kind of response from the community, and they're very grateful that we have the evidence to share with them. So thank you to them for encouraging us to take this step. Second, community engagement strategy, which is the most fun, by far and away the most fun strategy that we have. So we use participant advisory boards. We started this in about 2010. My student Anna, you can see in this paper, submitted a grant on the TV to the Gift Cards Institute, and they funded us to pay our community advisory board members to participate with us. It's been a wild ride since then. They are a hoot and a holler. So we always have members, about 13 to 14 older adults that participate. As I mentioned, they were in previous studies or older adults we just enjoy hanging out with. Most of them are generally African American at this point, and most are female. So what we promise, or what we do is quarterly, we have 1.5 hour sessions. We have a weekly 1 hour research seminar that we actually pay. You see Sharon in the pink coat. Sharon comes in and hangs out with us and teaches with our students. We think it's great that our students learn with an older adult present. I think it helps them ask respectful and important questions. I have never had such good reviewers for posters. They always preview posters and presentations. Our students cherish their feedback, and I find I don't have to say everything that was in my mind because my older adults are so good at this now. They beat me to the punch every time. It's really great. They come in ad hoc. If we're training students to interview older adults, they will come in and help them learn to interview. I love hearing them say things like, "I think you have marbles in your mouth. You're going to have to talk low and slow, or no older adult's going to hear you." If I say that, they don't believe me. But when Roger, the lab dad, says it, they step right up and say it. So our commitment to them is lunch and a ride, flexible scheduling, accessibility of materials. So if you need Braille, we get it done in Braille. We pay them, we honor their time, and we believe it's valuable, so we pay them. Thanks to for helping us down that path. And we recognize their contributions and publications, either in acknowledgements or as authors. They always have the choice to publish with us. They tell us that they're willing to help us because they are altruistic and they want to make the world a better place, and they believe this is one way they can give back. They also want to learn information to help themselves age better. They want the best and cutting edge medical information, and they come and often ask us stuff. It's not even the area that we study because they want a trusted source to help them sort through health information. They also want a benefit for their loved ones, to know how to help their family members and to inform their family members about health care. They come because they like to hang out. Someone asked me if we were doing these in Zoom. They do not like the Zoom. They want to be present, and they really want to have lunch, and it better be good. I've been in so much trouble about my bad lunches. And they want to understand academic research. Now, it's really good lunches. I promise they take care of me. So the benefits of listening to them, our participation rates are really high. They help us hone our message and help us understand what's important. They also help us ask better questions so that when we pitch a study in the community, it's more accepted by our community because the questions are the same questions that our advisory group has. Our team has amazing cultural competence that I don't think we would have had if we didn't hang out with them on a daily basis. They do not hesitate to let us know when we make a misstep. It's great. Our insight helps us gain trust more quickly in the community. Gives us like a secret handshake to being part of the community that we didn't know before we hung out with them. They help us really culturally tailor our interventions to make them just right for the community instead of bringing, I'll just give you an example in a second that shows you how this happens. Our raters and trainees have amazing experience learning with them, and we pilot everything with them before we take it in the field. So this is Elaine Hu, one of my former PhD students, and this is kind of how we adapt our intervention. So one of my colleagues, Lindy Clemson, created this really cool program called Life, which is a way to build exercise into your daily activity doing habits. So instead of going to an exercise class, you do DE, that's what brushing your teeth, which is actually harder than it sounds. Try it tonight. But this was an intervention that was developed for kind of wealthier folks in Australia, and if you open the book, it's really text dense, and there's lots of people that don't look like the folks that we serve. And so Elaine went about adapting the intervention. And I have never had heard so much laughter and giggling as our advisory board members ripped apart Lindy's, too much to Lindy's delight, her manual, reduced it, made it user-friendly for our community, and then we call them our models. Our older adult advisory board members serve as models, and so they are so proud that they are the stars of the manual that we have that's been adapted for St. Louis. So that was super fun. We were told that please don't give us another talk about fall prevention risks. They can't take it, it's boring. They don't want their meals interrupted at the senior center anymore by education talks. And because we asked, why won't anybody sign up? They're like, because you're boring and nobody wants to hear what you say. So they helped us develop this idea of fall prevention bingo. Lively discussions of fall prevention risks tied into a fall prevention bingo game. It is a special art for the bingo caller to provide the right level of facts and the right speed of bingo calling to keep things moving along. But we actually have fall prevention bingo on our website, free to use should you be brave enough to try to make that right balance between knowledge and partying and bingo calls. So we wouldn't have thought of it without them. Actually, McKenna Snyder was working on a project, and we have older adults hanging out with us. So the literature tells us that Black older adults are less likely to experience falls. I'm not sure that's right, but there's not very many epidemiological studies of Black older adults and falls. So in 2018, this paper was published in the Clinical Gerontologist. It was based on the National Health and Aging Trends data, the longitudinal data. And the authors kind of imply that perhaps fear of falling and the low fear of falling that Black older adults had that they reported in this national data was kind of the missing link that explained the lower fall rate in Black older adults. And McKenna, my student, who's now a PhD student at KU, and the older adults and the clinicians that have just finished 2 clinical trials, so that didn't sound right. It doesn't sound right. That's not right. So we looked into our clinical trials and pulled some off-the-shelf data, and we started to examine it. So McKenna and Selena Washington, here who's in my group, actually reran our data, looking at our fear of falling data that was collected prospectively, and examined whether or not this was true. And it isn't. In our prospective study of 259 older adults, of which 124 were Black versus the 3% or 6% in the national data set, they were more worried about falling. And they were 2.17 times more likely to have fear of falling than white older adults, which really helps us as clinicians realize that we need to offer fear of falling interventions to everybody, whether or not they're Black or white. So we try to get something into the realm that challenged that notion, because we didn't want therapists not providing fear of falling training for older adults. Third intervention, and I'll bring it home with this, is community-based research networks. And we started this in 2019. So this was kind of a wacky idea. AHRQs had these things called practice-based research networks for years. And these are groups of physicians, might be a group of pediatricians or primary care physicians, who work together, they form a network, and they build a network to communicate back and forth with academics. And it's a way for clinicians to ask questions of academics and academics to share information and to build research partnerships. And I was really interested in how we might leverage that idea for community agencies. So I invented something called the Community-Based Research Network, and we have developed that. So we did this to kind of reduce some gaps in service delivery, improve communication, all the things that PBR did. The group I was really interested in studying, I mentioned them earlier, are people aging with long-term physical disabilities. So these are, the 15.4 million people that we have in our society who can't find a home, right? They don't think they're old because they're, 45 to 65, but they have accelerated aging and they start to look like they're 80 before they're 60. So they have disabilities. So, but the independent living centers don't quite know what to do with them, right? Because they have issues related to aging. Well, the aging folks, they don't really want to talk to them because they don't want to be perceived as having a disability. I'm not old. I'm using a cane not because I have a disability. I'm just getting older, right? It's this weird disconnect that we've had with this group for years. So we tried to bring together independent living centers and area agencies on aging to kind of challenge them to think about the issues related to accelerated aging and what are we going to do with these folks that we abandoned in the community after they graduated from rehab so many years ago. So we were interested in people that had disabilities for at least 5 years, kind of early onset, lifelong developmental disabilities, or early onset disabilities are those acquired later in life, aging into disability. We know they have age-related health problems, so we wanted to kind of really think about function and what we might do to provide service for these folks. Not very many evidence-based interventions and a real big gap with what we do for them. So we call our CDRN ANDRA, the Missouri Aging and Disability Research Network. So we have remarkably CILs, Centers for Independent Living, and AAAs all signed up. And we hang out together. Our mission is to kind of figure out what to do. We talked about it. They told us what issues folks have. We launched a large cohort study, a 3-year cohort study with a lot of the participants that they serve. And it was one of the things that they told us was access. They get access to a network of community agencies. We get that access. So it's like having a single community partner on steroids. It just amplifies your impact and your work. The work that they can do together and the work that we can do with them is pretty cool. It gives us an incredibly broad reach for a group that's kind of hard to reach anyway. So it's been very impactful for us. They've helped us recruit participants. They have recruited other agencies to join because they've had so much fun in their network. They've brought their network partners in with us. They have given us important research topics. You're not going to be surprised, but well, let me tell you a little bit about them. So the average folks that we're talking about are 56 years of age. They've had a disability for about 19 years. The folks that we studied, we have about 300 white and 135 Black participants, mostly women in our sample. Much higher fall rate. Do you guys remember the fall rate I told you earlier? 1 in 4 with this fall rate. Super high. Striking and scary. This is the fall rate that we see for people with end stages of dementia. An incredibly huge injury rate. An incredibly huge rate of fear of falling or false self-efficacy, worried about things. So working with our network, we've decided as a group to start a new project. So we talked to them about HARP, our fall prevention program, and we are launching a HARP adapted for people aging with long-term disability across the state of Missouri right now. So we have a new pilot that's just underway. We actually selected the intervention together. We consulted with ourselves because we were the experts that developed the intervention. We talked with them because they're the other experts. We adapted it together to work in the network. We trained staff, including their staff and our staff, and we're actually just this week seeing our first participant. So the Madron group has been so incredibly fun and helpful to help us take what we learned from our aging group and bring it into our aging and long-term disabilities group. So the final thing I just want to leave you with, we have a few minutes for questions after this, but the thing that has been the most impactful for me in all of my research, all of my patient care, is my ability to listen to my constituents and my partners and my research participants and my patients. That has had the biggest effect, more so than, sorry guys, any theory, Any intervention that I've learned by listening to the folks that we serve, that's kind of how I think we can get further than we ever would without them. So I'm happy to, I have time for questions, right? Shirley?
We got lots of time, yep.
Okay, so always you can take my email down, some folks were asking for that earlier, happy to talk and happy to answer any questions you might have.